How's it rockin', Dween Nation? This is the Dween Sports Podcast. We're about to get underway. But before we do, we'd love if you could like, comment, subscribe, or share. We are posting weekly sports content, and we want to build up the brand that is Dween Sports. Thank you all, and enjoy.
What's up, Dween Nation? This is your host, Justin Pies, alongside Genoa Agudelo, and we are here because the NFC is setting up nicely for the divisional round. We still got another game on. We got the Vikings and Rams tonight, but we're going to discuss the hypotheticals if Minnesota moves on, Rams moves on, what we think is going to happen in this game, and then also everything else that's happened with the Eagles played, the Commanders played, and the both NFC East teams moved on. We're excited to dive into every single game on the NFC slate. We already had our AFC talks, so if you were interested on how wanted to talk about the Texans game or the Ravens game or the Bills game, we already did so. Just scroll down; it'll be right below this episode. But before we dive into all the NFC talk, how you doing, Genoa?
Yo, Dween Nation. I'm doing great, Justin. Both of my teams won. Both of my teams are on. I have two favorite teams. Obviously, I'm a passionate, loving Texans fan. But my second favorite team is those Eagles. I love those Dirty Birds up there in Philly. That's my second favorite team that I root for when the Texans are not in. Texans first, though, all day, every day. The Texans won the AFC, and my Eagles, my second favorite team, the Eagles, were able to win today. So I'm feeling pretty good, Justin. Hopefully one of my teams or both of my teams can make the Super Bowl. And maybe we can have some fun there. But Justin, I'm doing great. What a weekend it was in sports, though. But it's gonna keep going. It's gonna keep going. The Natties, next week, and we'll get to that, Dewey Nation, sometime this week.
Yes.
And then the road to the Super Bowl, Justin. The road to the Super Bowl is on the way. You know how much. And our 1-year anniversary of doing sports as a podcast is around the corner. In fact, I think it's a week from today.
I think it's was it? Yeah,
It was divisional round. I think we
Yep.
started last year. So feeling really good, though. Feeling really good.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to dive into what we saw this weekend. And before we do, actually, I want to prep this wild card game tonight and discuss everything that's going to lead through it. We got Vikings in LA to play the Rams, or I guess they are in Arizona due to the fires in Los Angeles. But discussing this game, obviously Darnold has been super great this year, and a 3-loss team not getting top 4 seed, not getting to host a wild card game is tough to see. Instead of having a bye week, they have to travel cross country to Los Angeles or to Arizona, which is crazy turnaround. The Lions deserve it; they dominated in that Week 18 game. But looking at this game, I think it all depends on the kind of Rams team we see. We see at points in the year they were not great and they weren't be able to score touchdowns, but then they have those massive games with Puka and Kyron. Obviously, Cooper Kupp has fallen off. But with this game, I mean, the Vikings, one big thing that they can hold on is their rushing defense has been phenomenal. Maybe that can cap Kyron, but I think this is a Puka, statement game that he's going to need 100 plus, maybe 2 scores to keep the Rams in it. As for the Vikings side, I really think anybody can have a game. I think Jay Jettas and Jordan Addison have been great. Hawkinson's a consistent piece as well as Aaron Jones. I think the one thing too with the Rams is their defense has improved over the back half of the season. So I'm interested to see how they fare against a team like the Vikings. And also, we did see this matchup on Thursday night, long ago, earlier in the season, and the Rams pulled off the victory. Now, there was controversy with the face mask, if you remember that, on Sam Darnold. But still, the Rams pulled off a game. They were up by 7, and they won that game. But I'm interested to see what we saw early in the year and what we're at now. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, well, first, I just want to say our thoughts and prayers here at Dewey Nation are with everyone there in Los Angeles and all over California there with those tragedies that are going on. We hope everybody's, getting safe and shelter. Much prayers out there for everyone. But now on to this game there, Justin. It's been shifted to Arizona Cardinal Stadium, a stadium where the Rams play in once every year. And so, obviously, I guess the Skoll family for Minnesota will be widely in attendance. I'm predicting there. I feel like it's going to be actually a majority of a Viking home game. I'm predicting. I'm giving it a 60, or I would say 65 to 35 of Minnesota fans to Rams fans. Now looking into this game, you mentioned how they faced off. A couple things for that. I remember going into that week before that game, I had predicted that Minnesota was going to fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
And then that next week they lost to Los Angeles. But that was the week, Justin, where I believe Puka and Cooper Kupp both returned there.
Right.
And Puka Nakua was absolutely phenomenal that game. I mean, phenomenal. Check these stats out, Justin, for Puka Nakua. He had 7 catches, 160 yards, literally after potentially tearing his ACL week 1. Like, he almost tore his ACL. Came back 6 weeks later on a Thursday night. Absolutely impressive there. Cooper Kupp had 50 yards and a touchdown there, so not too bad. But you mentioned, Justin, he has been absolutely non-existent for the Rams. It sort of makes you question those mid-season trade talks where they were like, "Oh, Cooper Kupp's going to be traded." I don't know if you remember that, Justin, but there
Yeah.
were some talks right before the trade deadline, which made no sense to me. I'm like, dude, this guy Cooper Kupp is a workhorse for you guys for the past couple of years. Why are you guys going to trade him? Now I see why. He doesn't seem like involved. Like he just wants to play. It's pretty sad there. Hopefully he can have a bounce back game. But looking into this game, these are one of the best receivers in the leagues going against each other. With Cooper Kupp going against Jefferson, with Jefferson going against Puka Nakua, and it's just phenomenal receiving play all over the board. And we can't forget about Jordan Addison, who's been hot in the last month, who's been kind of Sam Darnold's second to go guy. Jefferson's obviously getting a lot of attention, so that's what I'm looking for in this game, Justin. How can Sam Darnold get the football to people not named Justin Jefferson? Right? You got T.J. Hawkinson, who's fully healthy now. You got Jordan Addison, who's a stud. He's going to be drafted in the, I would say, 5th or 6th rounds in next year's fantasy drafts.
Yeah.
Not bad for Addison. He's a great wide receiver too. But Justin, how are they going to move the ball by running? Right? Aaron Jones, he's hot, he's cold, he's there, he's not, and so they're going to need to run the football on this Rams defense. That's been kind of porous. The Rams defense is they really are kind of they're able to really give up more points than they look. Like they were able to draft some studs this year out of Florida State. But even then, Justin, this defense is able to be thrown all over on. Josh Allen went there and hung like 50-something points. And so
Right.
I think that with Sam Darnold, I think that if you can just install the running game, work through the play action, I think they have the favorite in this game there, Justin, because no one's really talking about this, but this could be Matt Stafford's last game. It's a chance, Justin. It's a chance. You got to remember, this guy was drafted in 2009, the first pick overall. He's got a lot of mileage. Thankfully, Stafford's able to gotten over the hump, win some playoff games, and have won a Super Bowl. So with Stafford, this game's going to go through him, right? For me, I feel like even if Kyron Williams has 100 yards, a touchdown, which in that Thursday night matchup back in October, he only had 97 yards. So if Kyron Williams were to have a great game, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, I still feel like it doesn't matter. It has to come down to Stafford. See, he had 279 and 4 touchdowns in that Thursday night victory. He's got to do that again for them to win, right? Because if he doesn't, if it's been Stafford the last couple of weeks where he's been very underwhelming, they're not going to win this football game because this Minnesota Vikings defense, led by Brian Flores, they will get to you. And Stafford isn't that fast to escape this pass rush.
Yeah, I'm trying to put my head through this game, and be honest with you, I'm actually leaning more and more to the Rams side of things. If you look at it, obviously the Rams pulled off the victory earlier this season. They have a healthier Puka because it was Puka's first game back. Obviously, Kevin O'Connell is from the Rams tree, so McVay knows this guy in and out. It is technically their home game, even though we think Minnesota might have more in attendance. But also, I think it's going under the rug a little bit. But after that major game against the Bills, it was 44-42. And the next 3 games, the Rams didn't allow more than 10 points. And yes, in that next game, they played Seattle and they allowed 30, but they didn't start any of their starters. So that game's a wash for me. But essentially, their last 3 games that they had, they didn't allow over 10 points. And if you look at the Vikings last week, they were dominated by the Lions. And I know the Lions are a great team, arguably best team in the league, but they were kind of manhandled. It was right off the jump, and it looked like the Vikings didn't have it. And I just think, as you mentioned, this could be Stafford's last ride. And he might put it all into this game. And if you look at last year, they lost in the first round to the Lions. They're playing another team from that division of the NFC North. And so I think that they're going to want to get their get back on this division. keep moving on. They'll play the Eagles next week, which they've lost to in the past. I think a couple times they've lost to the Eagles. So I just think that this might be a game that the Rams are going to take away. And right now they're currently not favored. The Vikings are favored by 2.5 points. So just looking at it, obviously, if the Rams win, they play the Eagles, and if the Vikings win, they play the Eagles. So the way the wild card is set up so far with the wins and losses, there's no weird shuffling. It's winner plays Philadelphia. They go to Lincoln Financial next week. We're excited to see that game, though, today. By the time you're listening to this, I think it will be a great one, and it will be close to the end of the game. Moving on to the games that did happen over Wild Card Weekend, we'll start with the first one with the Philadelphia Eagles. They hosted the Packers. They won by yes, they did. They won by no. Did they score at the end? No, they didn't. They threw a pick. 22-10. Yes. Okay. So Philadelphia kind of dominated. It was somewhat close, but it was kind of a lackluster offensive output, I think, for both teams. Definitely the Packers more. It just looked like the Packers couldn't do anything besides using Josh Jacobs. There was no other offensive outpour. It was like, give it to Jacobs, and it didn't really work. And so going forward, I think Jacobs is still your big piece there. And I know going into the season and throughout the season, we were like, yes, the Packers have like 4 or 5 wide receivers that they can use, but it's still the same story that they do not have an alpha, a guy that they really can rely on. Obviously, Christian Watson has always dealt with injury. Jaden Reed had an underwhelming season. He didn't break out like we thought he might.
Yeah.
Dontavian Wicks has had catching problems, and then Dobbs had that weird drama in the middle of the year, and he's always kind of been a solid piece, but not something that's overly great. And then Tucker Kraft, who had a better year than I thought, he's still just an okay player. So they need something else in that wide receiver room or in the pass catcher room to get me excited for next year. Jordan Love also had a somewhat underwhelming season, similar to like CJ Stroud, where everybody was sky high on them, and then things just didn't turn out that way. And so I'm interested what you think about them, but also with Philly, Saquon was used a lot. He didn't get in the end zone. He didn't have a super efficient game, but I think that's all right. I think Philly's still in a good standpoint. I don't think I'm like any other way. I'm not too hype on them or too down on them. I think I'm kind of at the same with how they played, and obviously they play the winner of the game we just talked about. But what are your standpoints on both these two teams after this game this weekend?
Yeah, well, first of all, for Jordan Love, I mean, what a difference a year is. This time last year, he went into Cowboy Stadium,
Yep.
had about 400 yards. I think he had 4 touchdowns. He was literally unbelievable. We're like, wow, this guy is the second coming of Rodgers. And this guy's going to be a beast in 2024 through 25. And, you're right. He was very underwhelming. He had a couple good games this year. He had some flashes. But you know what, Justin? I think his 23 season was better,
Yeah.
right? His first year as a starter. This year, I mean, I think that you give more credit to Josh Jacobs being, they're one of the best pickups of the year besides, Baltimore and what Philly was able to get. But you know what, Justin? I mean, I was very disappointed. I mean, obviously, Jaden Reed did go out in this game, and I think so did Dobbs. I think both of them went out in this game. I think Dobbs got hurt in the first quarter, and Jaden Reed sometime around the second or maybe even after the halftime, he got hurt, and so he wasn't really much with his receivers. Not to mention that Wicks and Tucker Kraft just weren't getting much targets after. Wicks only had 6 targets. Kraft only had 5 targets. I mean, when you don't have Watson, who's, Justin, that's one thing. Actually, Watson could miss more of, the next year, right? Because he just tore his ACL. He might not even play, actually, now that I think about it. We might not see Watson until what, week 11, week 12? I mean, who's to say that Green Bay Packers are in contention in that tough division, right? You got to think that Chicago is going to be pretty good next year as well. They beat them in the last game of the year. And that's something that really threw me off, Justin, is that a team that the Bears, right, that's tanking, that's going to pick top 6, 7 in the draft, literally beats Green Bay in Lambeau Field the last week of the season. That's where I knew something was odd. And they ended up facing Philadelphia. They could have faced Tampa Bay, which I think I like Jordan Love in Tampa Bay. Who's to say that Dobbs doesn't get hurt? And so that's one thing that I want to say that, very disappointed with how Jordan Love played today. Justin, he had 3 interceptions. I mean, come on now, really. But, Justin, like I said in the last video, this is going to be the offseason of the wide receiver. A lot of teams need wide receiver, whether it's through the draft, through free agency. And then going into Philadelphia there, I'm not going to take too much of what they did. I think defense just kind of held it down.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts understood the storyline. Like it's the wild card. We don't have to go all out here. It is Green Bay. Their injury depleted there. We're home. We got the crowd. Let's just keep it safe. We don't need to overfeed Saquon. We don't need to, force feed AJ Brown, who only had a catch, I believe, today for 10 yards. Apparently he's a Barnes and Noble's wizard. He loves to read books. So, it's good that you kind of had him have the day off, because you're going to need it next week, because Justin, whoever wins tomorrow night's game, that's going to be a phenomenal game there in Philadelphia. Because think about it. Eagles or Rams, you got AJ Brown, Devontae Smith versus Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, and Kyron Williams versus Saquon.
Yeah.
Or you get the Eagles versus the Vikings, which is AJ Brown, Devontae Smith versus Addison and Jay Jettas. And then it's Aaron Jones versus, Saquon. It's kind of like the battle of the, free agent acquisitions of this past offseason. So very interesting of what's going to happen. That's going to be a shootout regardless. A wide receiver. It's like a fantasy footballer's dream of this matchup. Obviously, it's the playoffs, but still, Justin, I think that the Eagles didn't push the pedal too much, because you understand what's ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point there, and I think that they set up well against either team next week, even though those are great matchups, and I think Rams or Vikings will put up a good fight against Philly, but I think Philly matches up pretty well against both teams. So I'm pretty confident that they might be able to move on to the conference championship. But moving on to the last game of this NFC slate, which we just saw come down to the wire, and the doink for the victory by the Washington Commanders over Tampa Bay. I had Tampa Bay winning this game, but looking at how Jaden Daniels was able to put the team on his back, we didn't see super big performances besides, Terry McLaurin got in the end zone. Eckler had some big plays down the stretch. But Jaden Daniels is really the guy that everybody needs to be talking about. He was super great, especially on that last drive to get them in position to win the game. But yeah, I think they're also similar. We talked about the Broncos, where they're well ahead of schedule. I think that even the Commanders are even more ahead of schedule, getting this victory, continuing to move on in the playoffs in their first season, going from 4 victories to 12. I didn't expect Dan Quinn to do it so fast, but obviously we've seen his pedigree. He had a great defense at some points in Dallas, made a Super Bowl with the Falcons, won a Super Bowl as a coordinator for the Seahawks. So he's gone back and forth, and he's had success in places. And same with Kingsbury. People had thrown him out, with the Cardinals. It didn't work out. At USC, it didn't really work out. At Tech, it didn't really work out. So why would it work out here? And it's worked out thus far. I'm not saying next year they're going to be Super Bowl favorites or anything. But as for this year, they've been a good surprise. And another team, the Buccaneers, have also been a really good surprise. They lose Dave Canales. We think, Evans is on his last leg. Baker, is the Cinderella story going back into a pumpkin? But no, they had a great season. Where the Falcons were the favorite to win the division, they said, no, we're going to still do that, and won their 5th straight division title. But with the way the season ended, Chris Godwin will be back next year. I think Tampa Bay's still in a good spot. They got Bucky Irving. I think if Liam Cohen stays as the coordinator, I'll be super excited for this offense, because he stepped in and did really good with this offense. I could see him taking a head coaching gig, possibly. He did really great. Who knows where Todd Bowles is going to do, if he's going to retire or if he stays in. And if we run back the same team, I'm super excited with Tampa Bay. That's really what I'm saying. I don't think you need to change too much. Maybe on the defensive side, you need to beef it up a little bit. But I think this offense can contend with most people. They were just shorthanded. Didn't have Chris Godwin. It was Kate Otten's first game back from a 3-week injury. And Evans is great, but Irving looked great. So Tampa Bay, not too much to say for them. As for the Commanders, they move on. They're going to play the Lions, which I think this game's going to be good. I think the Lions, though, still should be heavy favorites for that game. But what do you think with how Commanders and Bucks played out?
Well, Justin, I just want to say, I wonder how the Cowboys fans and organization feel about not, hiring Dan Quinn and keeping Mike McCarthy there.
Right.
Dan Quinn's doing a phenomenal job, with this. Dan Quinn's been unbelievable, really. But you know what, Justin? My thoughts out of this game was Jaden Daniels was absolutely just poised today. Was absolutely fluid. It you know what? I actually had to ask myself twice tonight. Is this Jaden Daniels' first year or second year? Like, no, he's only his first, because I'm a Texas fan. CJ got drafted 2 years ago with the number 2 pick, and then this year Jaden Daniels with the number 2 pick. And so I was like, man, these number 2 picks are something. I'll tell you that. And it's just like, man, he was just so poised. Justin didn't make mistakes. It was like the Bucs would get a tackle for loss, and then he would make some big pass to Daimi Brown, who had a great game tonight, or it was McLaurin, or he maybe would run it for a first down himself. He was just so the fact that this wasn't a home game for him is impressive. The fact that he led a drive, he was making the audibles, and that final drive led into that game-winning field goal. I was impressed. And I'm not saying he's going to go into Detroit and do anything special. I don't think so. Obviously, we should have the Lions to win that, but I think that he's going to make it a little tough in the first half for the Lions a little bit. I think that the streak is going to he's going to kind of pick up where he left off. He's in some type of a groove. So I was impressed there. I was very disappointed in Baker Mayfield. And Justin, this has kind of been – Baker Mayfield only had 3 incompletions, which is impressive. He did have a costly fumble that put, the Commanders in the red zone. And that's one thing about Baker Mayfield that I've never been a fan of, Justin. This guy, he's been in good spots, but he just doesn't take advantage of when it's due. Like, he had kind of this game, in my opinion. You're going against a rookie quarterback, a guy, obviously Dan Quinn's been a coach in this league, but this is his first year with the team. And it's like, excuse me. It's like y'all have this hot streak going with this offense, and you just let it go. It's very disappointing. I wanted Baker to prove me wrong, because I've been kind of I wouldn't say a doubter. I'm just never really been optimistic about Baker Mayfield. I'm a little afraid that this is one of his best shots to go far, because Justin, the way the Panthers ended the season this year, it's looking like I want to pick them as the division winners. Also, Mike Penix will be going into his second year.
Yeah.
And second-year quarterbacks that don't play much their first year usually historically play good their second year. The Falcons, with that offense, Bijan is in his third year. Drake London looks good. If they can add another target, Mooney back there, they're going to be good. And the Saints will probably still be worse than the Buccaneers. But I'm just a little afraid, Justin, that this was the Buccaneers' final chance. Maybe they got it going into next year. They do got Bucky Irving and Rachaad White going to next year. They could be getting back Chris Godwin, Kate Otten. Maybe they need to add a tight end. I'm not really sure what Tampa Bay needs to do in the offseason, to be honest with you. Their defense seems solid at sometimes not. Who knows if they need another target? They might have found something with McMillan. But it's really tough to see what it is they need to do. Perhaps maybe improve the O-line just a little bit, and maybe just go all out on defense, since Bowles is the defensive guy there. But very impressed with Washington there. I don't think they do much next week in Detroit, but I'm confident enough for Jaden Daniels to at least make it interesting.
Yeah, for Tampa Bay, I think that obviously after that Tom Brady Super Bowl and the Tom Brady era kind of ended, people were like, oh, straight to rebuild. So I feel like they've had a couple years where they've really squeezed a lot out of the stone kind of thing, where they pulled out some good seasons when not many people thought they would. So I agree. I think it's coming to an end. I think they may have one more year where they'll be feisty for a playoff spot next year. But you're right. Bryce Young is growing. We saw the Panthers really turn it around. And same with Atlanta. Penix looks like he's going to be a good play, and now he's going to have a full offseason as the QB1. So I think that you're right. Panthers and Falcons have a really good chance to make it difficult for Tampa Bay. And they're going upwards, where I think Tampa Bay is going down. We talked to the Saints. The Saints, I think, will still need a rebuild next year. But I think you make good points there. And then as for the Commanders, I also think they need to strike gold now. To be honest with you, I know they're young, and you can think that they're going to go up, but I'm just going to look at the track record of Cliff Kingsbury. He started out hot in Arizona. Things went down. And the way I think Dallas is going to improve next year, Philly's going to be great. Hopefully the Giants can improve, get their franchise quarterback. So I think that the Commanders, if they can strike, lightning in a bottle against Detroit, that'd be something. And we don't expect that, but we will discuss more in depth on that game later this week on Wednesday or Thursday. You'll get to see this episode. But yeah, Dwayne Nation, that set up the NFC side of the playoffs with Philly playing the winner of today's game with the Vikings and the Rams, and Washington headed to the Lions. So we got almost essentially the full bracket laid out. We're excited to discuss those later this week. It's going to be fun. We had a good stretch of games this weekend. Only one really close one, but still all exciting watches. But thank you guys for listening. If you're also interested in college football, we're going to have an episode later this week discussing everything around the national championship. But thank you guys for listening. And Genoa, send us out.
Yo, Dwayne Nation. This was our NFC wildcard reactions recap as we are on the road to the Super Bowl. One of the best times of the year, to be honest, in the sports world there. Finding out who's going to win and who's going to go to the Super Bowl, because this is only one game. You get one try. You lose, you're done. It's not like NBA, MLB, NHL, where you got a 7-game series. No, this is one game, and it's any given Saturday or Sunday.
Right.
And so thank you, Dewey Nation, for watching. We got a ton of content on the way this week. We love you guys. And as always, peace.